Hello, today I'm going to talk to you about what it is that publishers do. I talked last time about what agents do, and of course as an agent I'm going to have to be a little bit careful about what I say, but there's nothing really very controversial. So let's take it at the point at which your book has been acquired. The agent has managed to take it through acquisitions, everyone at the publishers bought into the idea and they love it and they're very excited about publishing it, and so what happens next? Well, there are various things that happen, and they kind of happen simultaneously. The first thing, of course, is that the editor will probably have some form of editorial input. Nowadays, that tends to be a little lighter than it used to be. In the past, I think that the days when a manuscript that showed a lot of promise but was maybe a bit rough around the edges could get acquired have gone, and things now get submitted in a pretty polished and finished state. So there doesn't tend to be all that much for editors to do, but certainly some editors do edit, and some of them edit quite hard and are really very, very good at it. So there'll be some editing, and that will then lead into the process of putting the manuscript through production, as it's known, so that it goes from being a Word document, essentially, or a TypeScript, if you're very old-fashioned, to being page proofs ready to be printed and bound into a book. And that involves copy editing so that syntax is sorted out and errant apostrophes are put in the right place, and the right sort of the right sort of punctuation. Everything is tidied up and proofread so that there aren't little typographic errors. And that involves a process of combing and checking, and it's quite laborious, quite labour intensive. And the manuscript will be gone through several times before it is hopefully clean enough and finished and ready to be printed. And of course, you as the author will have there are various couple of points where you get to check the work that's going on, because in particular copy editors can change manuscripts really quite a lot. But by and large, that's a very uncontroversial process. At the same time as all of that is happening, the editor will have written, pretty much at the point of acquisition, an advance information sheet. This will have a proto blurb for the book, some key selling points, the key comparisons, the market, the demographic the book is aimed at, what kind of book it's like, and how the sales force should be selling it to the retailers. This is obviously incredibly important because the sell-in to the retailers start a long time in advance of publication, 10 months, longer sometimes. And that's one of the reasons why the publishing schedule, which can seem unbelievably slow to authors, and why it can take, at the point of acquisition, a book can be scheduled 18 months, even 2 years in advance, ahead of then. And that's a good chunk of the reason why, because to sell books in effectively can take months and months and months, and there are endless presentations, endless reiterations of the attempt to get the book into a prominent place in the shops, into promotions, into all of them, because the shops are as risk averse as publishers are, as everyone is in this environment. At the same time as the AI gets done, there will be a cover brief, and the cover brief will in a sense be covering some of the same grounds as the AI. It will be giving the jacket designers the basic information they need to know about the book. Obviously they'll read some of it, but they probably won't read all of it. The basic information they need to know to come up with a jacket that will position the book in the right way, in the strongest possible way in the market. So, is it chick lit? Is it a thriller? Is it crime? Is it literary? Is it a reading group novel? How does it need to be placed in the market, and what sort of jacket should it have? And jackets can be really, really tough. Every once in a while, having been a publisher, you get a book and you do a jacket design, or the designers do a jacket design, and it comes out and it's just fantastic from the word go, and you barely need to change a thing. And those are wonderful moments, because the alternative tends to be endless reiterations and refinements of jackets that just aren't quite working, people aren't that happy about. Because a really good jacket can make an immense difference. It's all about the proposition, that the book is making to the consumer. And there are all sorts of studies about the amount of time, the blink period that people have, that a jacket, people will glance at a jacket, face out in W.H. Smith's in Liverpool Street Station or wherever it is, and it's got half a second to make to say, pick me up, have a closer look. And if you do that, you've won. If you fail to do that, you've lost. And obviously, the majority of jackets don't do that very successfully. So getting it right is really, really important. So let's hope, we've taken it to the point where you've got a great jacket, and you've got the advanced information all sorted out, and the book's going through the production process. So we then have a moment where marketing and publicity begins to come into play, because the plans now about how we're going to publicise the book, what sort of review coverage is it going to get? Well, the reviews, sadly, don't perhaps sell books as much as they once might. Is there any editorial coverage the book can get? Are there other things, other publicity stunts or angles of attack that can be used to help give the book and the author prominence? And what can be done to market the book in terms of social media, particularly at the moment, and other things that might be done. And that's a very important moment, probably 6 months or so before publication, to bring the author in with the agent, to sit down with the editor and the marketer and publicist to discuss all of this. And this is one of the key moments for authors, and one of the key misconceptions authors have about publishing and the way it works. Because when you get a deal, you're not being employed by Random House or by Penguin or by HarperCollins. You are entering into a business partnership with them. They are obviously the vast, massive multinational corporation, and you are just a solitary individual. But they are licensing the volume rights from you, the book publishing rights from you. And the notion that you can just simply, at that point, passively sit back and allow them to take over, and because they're so good at their job, that they'll do a great job, and then the last thing they need is you being involved, is, again, one that, I don't think it ever really worked. And certainly it's a mistake. Not that they aren't good at their job, but they are very strapped for resources, and particularly their staff are very, very time poor. So for the majority of certainly debut fiction, the amount of time that each publicist and each marketing person has to spend on your book is very, very little. So the more that you can be proactive and be involved and work with them, the better. And obviously that relationship can be a little bit tense and a little bit awkward, because the possibility of stepping on toes exists, and ultimately they have control about how the book gets marketed and how the book gets sold. That's one of the things you've done by signing the contract. But of course, it's your book. So it's not an easy process, but it is a very, very important one. And done right, which is not really very hard, it can really, really make a difference to how well the book does. So author involvement and engagement at an early stage is really important, as of course is writing book 2 and all of those kinds of things, but that's a slightly separate matter. And so managing that process and working with publicists and marketers to up to the point of publication, and that those all important few weeks before publication, because one of the things that happens in the run-in to publication is that although the sell-in starts months before, the fact is that increasingly, particularly supermarkets, make their decisions about what books they're going to put on their shelves later and later and later. And they can be making decisions a month before publication, which is a nightmare for publishers, because they've got no idea how many books they need to print and who's going to be stocking them, and it's incredibly uncertain. So the more that you can be doing these marketing and publicity things in the months leading up, so that perhaps you get nice quotes in, the more material you can hand to the sales forces, new things, new reasons to go back to the retailers and say, remember that book I was talking about? Well, it's fantastic because we've just got a quote from whoever it is. All of that extra ammunition you can give really, really helps. And so hopefully you get to the point where you've got good retail support, You've got some great marketing initiatives. You've got some great social media stuff happening. You've got good publicity angles taking place. You've got articles here and blogs there, and all of that. And the book hits the shelves on whichever Thursday it is, and publication is, for some strange historical reason, always on a Thursday. And then you hope it works. There's always a very nervous, particularly for books that have managed to get themselves into a very prominent position in retail. Those first few days are incredibly important. And that nervous wait for Nielsen Bookscan, who report all the book sales, the physical book sales, report back on a Tuesday afternoon, and there's a lot of anxiety on Tuesdays in publishing companies because they're waiting for that week's sales figures to come through and to see who's in the charts and who's not in the charts, and which books have performed as people would have hoped and which books have underperformed. And hopefully your book has performed. And in the month or two after publication, those sales figures will come through and a clearer picture will emerge. And you will then begin to have an idea of how confident you can feel about book 2, how confident the publishers are going to feel about book 2, and steel yourself for starting the process all over again. So there we go. That's a very brief, and there's loads of stuff to unpack in that, but that's a brief overview of the publishing process, and I hope that was useful. Thanks. Bye-bye.